Okay, welcome back to the live. I do apologize for the brief technical issues. I hope that we have managed to sort things out and we can begin again. So, yeah, we had a bit of a crash there, small technical wiring issue, which hopefully will get sorted out now. But in the meanwhile, as we are progressing, we are talking about the supernatural and paranormal with Strange Bones, which is me. And we are on the topic of aliens and UFOs, and we are doing Germany. The idea of what may or may not be there in Germany. And of course, there are a number of interesting topics and stories to come across. Welcome, Jonathan. And Sirikat, you came back. Thank you so much. Um, so, we do know that in Germany there is quite a lot that may or may not have gone on. And there is a body which is staffed by volunteers called SENAP, which examines the alien presence or possible alien presence over Germany. And one of the interesting things that they do is they try to work sort of backwards in a way, if you will, because they try to disprove all of the reports that come in. And they say they manage to do that for most. But what's very interesting, of course, is that a number of them remain unsolved. Now, one of the things which I find to be very interesting is that the fact that um, despite all of their attempts, a number of the issues that are reported, shall we call them, turn out to be Elon Musk's fault, which I think is hilarious. Um, it seems that a number of the things spotted in the sky since 2019 uh, are in fact Elon Musk's satellites appearing as a string of pearls when launched into space. And of course, most people didn't know too much about that and didn't realize quite what it was that was up there, which caused a number of reports, which, as it turned out, was just Elon doing his thing. Nevertheless, Elon alone is not um, the only guilty party in that regard, though we will say that just recently Hans-Jürgen was contacted by the German air traffic control, the DFS, with a request from the pilots of a passenger plane to explain the dancing spots of light on the horizon, and yes, that was Elon. So there are a lot of possibilities as to what might be out there and might be the cause, but not everything. And we are going to begin in 1561 with the celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg. And in this regards, um, we go back to Hans Glasser's description of a mass sighting, which is very important. Um, in April of 1561, it was reported that the free imperial city of the Holy Roman Empire, Nuremberg, experienced some kind of apparent extraterrestrial battle in the sky. Now, ufologists say that this was clearly spacecraft doing something up there. Everyone else says no, it wasn't. It was likely to have been some kind of atmospheric phenomenon, even though it doesn't quite fit the story. Now, according to the history, um, the broadsheet illustrated with a woodcut and text by Hans Glasser measures 26.2 centimeters um, by 38 centimeters. And the document is archived at the Zentrale Bibliothek Zürich in Zurich, Switzerland. According to the broadsheet, around dawn on the 14th of April, 1561, many men and women observed hundreds of spheres, cylinders, and other odd-shaped objects that moved erratically overhead. Now, this is interesting, especially because, as we recall, when you see something flying through the air that doesn't deviate in its course or moves in a very constant way, very often that's something that is probably explicable, simply because, like, especially with a hoax, if I throw something into the sky, um, it'll go straight, it won't turn corners. So erratic movement has always been a pretty good indication that it might be something else. Of course, these days we have drones, which makes it a great deal harder. Nevertheless, technology improves, but also doesn't. Make of that as you will. Now, the aerial battle, as it was reported, came out of the sun, followed by a large black triangular object. Now, we all know that UFOs very often come in different specific shapes, and the triangular ones are well known, and many of them are indeed dark. So that fits to other places' stories. Um, Exhausted combatant spheres fell to the earth in clouds of smoke. The broadsheet claims that witnesses observed hundreds of spheres and cylinders and odd shapes moving erratically. The woodcut depicts those different shapes, including cross-like objects, yet another ones that we have found in the past. Small spheres, two large crescents, that's a new one. A black spear-like object, which is a new one. And cylindrical objects, try this, my tongue has gone funny. Cylindrical objects from which several small spheres emerged and darted around the sky. Now, we know from other reports in other places that the cylindrical ones very much do seem to be some kind of personnel transport, and the smaller scout ships come out of them. So this again fits other places' explanations of things, which might indicate a certain amount of veracity and might not. So they say that there appeared in the middle of the sun two blood-red semicircular arcs, like as if the moon in its first and last quarters. In the sun, above and below, and on both sides, the colour was as blood, and there stood a round ball of partly dull, partly black ferrous colour. Likewise, there stood on both sides, and as a torus about the sun, such blood-red ones, and other balls in large number, about 3 in a line, and 4 in a square, and some alone. And in between these globes there were visible blood-red crosses, between which there were blood-red strips becoming thicker unto the rear, and in the front malleable like rods of reed glass, which were intermingled, among them two large rods, one on the right and one on the left, and within the small and big rods there were 3 and also 4 and more globes. And they all begun to fight among themselves, so that the globes which were first in the sun flew out to the ones standing on the sides. Thereafter, the globes outside the sun in the small and large rods flew into the sun. Besides these globes going back and forth among themselves and fought vehemently with each other for over an hour, and when conflict in and again out of the sun was most intense, they did become fatigued, and to such an extent that they all, as said, fell from the sun down upon the earth, and as they fell, it was as if they all burned, and they then washed away on the earth in immense smoke. So their response, of course, to this, as you can imagine, was one of a rather large amount of terror, and being, as they were, very religious, of course, they attributed it possibly unto something of God uh, sent to us to bring about repentance. Uh, and we still are, unfortunately, so ungrateful that we despise such high signs and miracles of God, or we speak of them and discard them unto the wind, that God may send us such frightening punishment on account of our ungratefulness. So they were terrified and took this as being a very, very good reason um, to absolutely pray harder. And I'm reasonably certain that the clergy of the time made good use in terms of this to promote the job, as it were. Modern explanations do have a lot to say, um, and they say that clearly there must have been something else in regards what it was. However, ultimately, nobody knows. And a number of the explanations from the ufologists seem to fit stories from other places. So I shall leave it to you to decide. However, it was not the only one. We know that there were several other events that occurred, um, which include, for example, the 1566 phenomenon over Basel. Now, a series of mass sightings of celestial phenomena occurred in 1566 above Basel in Switzerland. And while we are doing Germany, of course, we are just going to touch on this briefly to give us a comparison, if you will. And here again, they speak of numerous red and black balls in the sky that appeared to fight together. So it seems that while the Nuremberg issue was um, interpreted as being a message from God, it could well have been aliens. And should it have been something in this regard, then it would seem that it wasn't only there. Now, we also have in 1665, also in the Swedish lands, in Stralsund, which now, of course, is part of Germany and therefore counts. Unusual flying ships seen over Stralsund. These ships were described as being dark grey or having a color that was like that of the rising moon, and sometimes said to be covered by a dome like that of a hat, as well as being saucer-shaped like a plate, seen flying over the St. Nicholas Church near the Baltic Sea, where they would hover until evening. Some reports describe the ships being of varying sizes and even battling each other in the sky over the sea. And again, of course, because, well, that's the time, it was immediately interpreted as a message from God, um, which, of course, I suppose is understandable yet again.
Early in the morning of
But nevertheless, um, we also have a much more modern description, which happened in Thuringia. I'm not actually certain exactly where Thuringia is. It's part of Germany, but this was a UFO sighting that was investigated by the Stasi, and it is indeed a flying saucer. That is to say, a saucer-shaped thingy that quite probably you would pretty much um, recognize as your traditional kind. Um, the Ministry of State Security, the Stasi, of the German Democratic Republic investigated unidentified flying objects spotted in 1988 in Neuenhof in Thuringia. And this is what the Bild said about it, adding that the investigation into a body similar to a balloon in the air was carried out by the Stasi Center in Eisenach. The fear was that actually it was a means of escape from what was then East Germany. But no evidence of this was found, and the Stasi then concluded that the most likely explanation was that the full moon was responsible in some manner or form, um, interrupting research. However, no one was actually able to truly get a conclusive answer. And one of the witnesses said that um, they saw this thing rising slowly, but in a meandering motion, which is quite interesting. And as we know that for the time there wouldn't have been many aerial objects like drones, and meandering implies something other than a faked thing. As the Bild notes, what is surprising is the fact that the Stasi even got involved at all. In the German Democratic Republic, UFOs were viewed with suspicion because they were considered to be an expression of an anti-socialist worldview. The then East German press reported in an ironic tone as amusing curiosities, sightings of UFOs in Western Bloc countries. They didn't appear according to state documents and were generally classified as possible espionage activities or escape attempts. Now, of course, this was right in during the Cold War, which would explain their view of these things. But what about Nazi UFOs? Now, here's an interesting thing, and this has turned up in ufology, in conspiracy theory, in science fiction, in comic books. The ideas that the Nazis during the war built UFOs. Now, the theories are varied. Some of them actually say that it was successful. However, There has been no proof of this as such, but it makes for a very interesting topic. Um, that apparently these crafts, which were indeed flying saucers, um, were developed in a secret underground set of bases, um, which still survive to this day, um, from when they were developed and built between World War One and World War Two, um, in underground bases in Antarctica, South America, or even the United States, which is a new one on me. I had heard of the ones in Antarctica and absolutely South America, but so the idea, and this is not a German conspiracy, but from outside about them, if that makes sense, is that um, during the Second World War, unusual sightings occurred in the skies above Europe. Fact. Um, and they were interpreted as Nazi technology. In the first years of the Cold War, Western nations speculated that many of these sightings might stem from Soviet deployment of captured or reverse engineered Nazi technology. Hey, Endless Thoughts, welcome, welcome. Lovely to have you back. Um, and they were called Foo Fighters. And those of you who are old like me might remember the band called Foo Fighters, which got their name from this. So, a variety of unusual and anomalous aerial phenomena were witnessed by both Axis and Allied personnel. And while some Foo Fighter reports were dismissed as the misinterpretations of the troops in the heat of combat, others were taken quite seriously, and leading scientists such as Luis Alvarez began to investigate them. At least in some cases, they suspected that the Foot Fighter reports in the European theater represented advanced German aircraft or weapons, particularly given that the Germans had already developed such technological inventions as V1 and V2 missiles and the very first operational jet powered Me 262 fighter planes. So it is true, there were some pretty good things developed. So it was naturally thought that the Foo Fighters were part of this. And it seems that some of these Foo Fighters actually did inflict damage to Allied aircraft, which added to that belief. Now, ghost rockets, another interesting thing that turned up. And ghost rockets basically were rocket or missile shaped UFOs sighted in 1946, mostly in Sweden and nearby countries like Finland. The first reports of ghost rockets were made in 1946 by Finnish observers. About 2,000 sightings were logged between May and December of 1946. 200 sightings were verified with radar returns, and physical fragments were even found of them, which implies at least they were a something, whatever that something was. Welcome, Layla. Yes, I hope so. Here we love our conspiracies, our weirdness, and our strange. And we're doing supernatural and paranormal to try and figure out whether or not there is anything out there. So comment as much as you like. Join in if you feel so moved. You are most welcome. And give your thoughts. So, investigations concluded that ghost rockets were probably actually mostly meteors. Whether or not that is true is a different thing entirely. And huge thanks for the donuts, Endless Thoughts. That is a great kindness on your part. We do like donuts. I'm not allowed them. I'm diabetic, which is a terrible thing because I do love donuts. But nevertheless, that's not the topic. So the debate uh, continues to this day, what they all are. We know that there was response to their sightings. The Swedish army actually issued a directive that the newspapers were not allowed to report on the exact location of ghost rocket sightings or any information regarding the direction and speed of the object. Um, why this is unclear. Now, similar sentiments regarding German technology resurfaced in 1947 with the flying saucer craze. Um, after Kenneth Arnold's widely reported close encounter with similar such things. Um, and it was noted that the advanced flying wing aeronautical designs of the German Horten brothers were similar to some UFO reports. In 1959, Captain Edward J. Ruppel, the first head of Project Blue Book, uh, wrote that when World War II ended, the Germans had several radical types of aircraft and guided missiles under development. The majority were in the most preliminary stages, but they were the only known craft that could even approach the performance of objects reported by UFO observers. So, now, here is a thing which did come up before, and Endless Thoughts will absolutely back me on this, that every now and then humanity seems to be able to develop and build something that's really advanced, and then sometime not too long afterwards manage to lose the ability to build this technology. And one of the reasons for that is theorized is that interference by alien or other advanced technological races that are assisting the humans involved. So it's a possibility that if suddenly this technology turned up, maybe an alien helped the Germans build it. It's theorized. Now, you may very well say that that's rubbish, and that would be a very fair comment. Um, Certainly, we can agree that trying to prove such a thing would be very, very difficult. Um, but the theories remain, and maybe there's something to them because we keep adding to our list of very odd places that we didn't quite manage to explain and things that seem to be out of time. Um, and as was brought up in previous lives, Göbekli, the Voynich manuscript, how the hell did they build the pyramids and more? And perhaps this is an example. Now, we do know that Rudolf Schreiber, who died in 1953, gave an interview to German news magazine Der Spiegel, in which he claimed that he had designed a craft powered by a circular plane of rotating turbine blades, 15 meters in diameter. He said the project had been developed by him and his team at BMW's Prague works up until April of 1945, when he fled to Czechoslovakia. His designs for the disc and model were stolen from his workshop in Bremerhaven, Leer in 1948, and he was convinced that Czech agents had built his craft for a foreign power. In a separate interview with Der Spiegel in October of 1952, he said that the plans were stolen from a farm he was hiding in near Regen in 1945. There are a number of discrepancies in his stories, which are noted. It's known that in 1953, when Avro Canada announced they were developing the VZ9AV Avro car, a circular jet aircraft with an estimated speed of 1,500 miles per hour, that's 2,400 kilometers an hour, the German engineer Georg Klein claimed that such designs had already been developed during the Nazi era, and Klein identified two types of German flying discs, which leads you to wonder. Did they develop German flying discs, or was there alien involvement? It's a good question. A non-rotating disc was developed in Breslau by V2 rocket engineer Richard Miese, which was captured by the Soviets while Miese fled to the US via France and actually ended up working for Avro. A disc developed by Rudolf Schreiber and Klaus Hammermoll in Prague, consisting of a ring of moving turbine blades around a fixed cockpit. Klein claimed that he had witnessed the craft's first crewed flight on the 14th of February 1945, when it managed to climb to 12,400 meters in 3 minutes, gaining a speed of 2,200 kilometers an hour in level flight. Miese claimed he had worked on the V2 program but had no corroborating evidence. Klein claimed the engineer had escaped capture by the Soviets in Breslau by flying out in a Messerschmitt Me-163 Comet, which would have been impossible. There is no evidence that Habermoll even existed. Rudolf Schreiber claimed he had worked for Heinkel as a test pilot and engineer between 1940 and 1941, also not corroborated. The problem is, after the war, of course, there were so many things destroyed that how on earth can you prove anything? It's virtually impossible to do that. Huge thanks for all the likes. You guys are wondrous. And I'm very pleased to have you with me. Nevertheless, we do know that despite lack of corroboration, it seems that things might have been at least attempted to be built that did appear like flying saucers. As one aeronautical engineer, Roy Fedden, stated, "I have seen enough of their designs and production plans to realize that if they, the Germans, had managed to prolong the war some months longer, we would have been confronted with a set of entirely new and deadly developments in aerial warfare." He added that the Germans were working on several very unusual projects, but would not elaborate on his statement. So by the 1960s, fringe authors started writing stories, fiction, of course, of the Nazi UFOs that were tied to both the occult and aliens. Of course, surely fiction. However, according to these theories and stories, various potential code names or subclassifications were used, such as the Rundflugsicht, the Führball, the Discus, the Haunebu, and the Haunebergrat, and more. So some of them were amusing, such as the Kugelwaffel and the Jenseitsflugmaschine, but the fact is that many were referenced, and it's very, very hard to say if it was based on anything other than pure imagination. Certainly, they've stuck around in fiction that references the time and more, even video games. So it's difficult. We do know that there was certainly uh, a lot of research in advanced propulsion technology, including rocketry. Um, we know that Victor Schauberger's engine research was real. The Horten flying wing craft were absolutely real, and the Arsasak AS-6 experimental circular winged aircraft was real. Whether or not it actually worked, however, is another story. Um, DC says, endless thoughts. Why do you say? Are you laughing at me? You probably should. Um, but yes, look, crazy as the stories are, they were based on things that were really done. Now, we know for a fact, and while it is being quietly covered up, even Britain during World War II enlisted the aid of a number of prominent pagans to um, use magic against the Nazi forces. And we know that the Nazis were very big into their occult as well, and it caused the development of what is called the Thule Society, which was a party within um the Nazi party. So uh, we know that in the book, The Morning of the Magicians, the Les Matins des Magiciens by Louis Pavels and Jacques Bergier, uh, there were a number of interesting and quite spectacular claims of the Vril Society of Berlin, which is one of the weirdest societies I've ever researched. It involved this special extraterrestrial energy force, which apparently could do all kinds of things. We will touch on it one day, I think. Um, there was a whole UFO type thing. I'm sorry for that. You'll have to be creative in your speech. TikTok is very annoying like that, I will admit. They censor all sorts of stuff, for which I'm very, very sorry. Um, but try, because I love your view on things. But yes, the Vril Society is basically um, almost a UFO worshipping society. I use that phrase carefully, but they certainly did want to and claim to have made contact with an alien race, and was dedicated to creating spacecraft to be able to make partnership with them. And they were connected to both the Thule Society and the Nazi Party. And the Vril Society developed a number of flying disc prototypes. With the Nazi defeat, the society allegedly retreated into a base in Antarctica and vanished into the well known, of course, Hollow Earth, which apparently there's a door into it there, along with the leaders of the advanced race inhabiting inner Earth, which is another weird thing that we are going to have to get to in due course. There's a lot. Apparently, you can. If you fail to use that word, just you say Darwining, which has so many wonderful implications. Um, so the next interesting point are the works of Ernst Zundel, um, and he was a big one on ufology as well, which was very, very interesting. And in his uh, Holocaust Denier Ernst Zundel uh, started Samistat Publishers in the 1970s. He initially catered specifically to the UFO community, which was at its peak of public acceptance then. His book claimed that flying saucers were Nazi secret weapons launched from the underground base in Antarctica, from which the Nazis hoped to conquer the Earth and thereafter the planets. Uh, he actually sold seats on an exploration team um, to locate the polar entrance to the hollow Earth. And some who interviewed Zundel claimed that he privately said it was a hoax. Um, but he publicly, at least, defended all he said right up until 2002. So who's to say? Uh, Miguel Serrano wrote the book um, in which he claimed that Adolf Hitler was in fact an avatar of Vishnu, uh, which I've got to admit is a little bit of a stretch, but nevertheless, and was at the time communing with the Hyperborean gods in the underground Antarctic base in New Swabia, which is in the Antarctic, apparently. Serrano predicted that Hitler would then lead a fleet of UFOs from the base to establish the Fourth Reich, um, the final battalion. I suspect that might be a load of crap. Sorry. Yeah, I got a notification after one of my other lives because we were doing ghosts, and of course I mentioned the Darwining far too often apparently. Um, so, eh. So it seems that a lot of people really, really, really did believe in the Nazi connection and in the aliens and more um, in that regard. One of the things which is very interesting, though, and I'm just going to touch briefly upon it for you, is a report by the CIA. In reference to Germany, and this is an official classified CIA document now released, which speaks Berlin, July, published with the sworn testimony of the eyewitness Oskar Link, a 45-year-old German and former mayor of Gleimershausen in West Berlin. Intelligence officers have begun investigation of a most unusual flying saucer story. According to the story, an object resembling a huge frying pan having a diameter of 15 meters landed in a forest clearing uh, in the Soviet zone of Germany. So, well, okay, now this is a very important question, guys, and one which I think does need answering. So, Endless Thoughts has said here, what do the visiting aliens look like? Do they have legs and arms and lungs and what have you? So, the first theory or view that might mean something is based in the fact, okay, if aliens exist, why haven't they properly visited? Why haven't they come and introduced themselves and what have you? Which is a very fair question. If they're an advanced technology, then why haven't they come here? And the first answer is that our atmosphere is poisonous to them. So you might see UFOs, but you will never have an alien really landing here. Um, which implies that all of the claims that there's been an alien landing here is in fact not true. The second thing is that it seems that people suspect that there are different types of aliens, and they do indeed look different, which skeptics will tell you means that, look, it's like all mythological creatures, they're built the way we think these things should be built. Why should an alien be a little grey man-shaped thing? Just because we are man-shaped, why should anything else be? Which is fair. It's an argument that holds a certain amount of reason. Um, in contrast to it and in argument against it, there have been those um, well, there are those who have said actually they changed their appearance to blend in, like the reptilians are supposed to. Now, Ingersoll says maybe they don't breathe, maybe they don't need water, just dirt for consumption, for energy. Well, again, a difficult one to answer. It's quite possible. We've had plenty of stories of underwater aliens, so maybe they need to be in water. Um, they might be completely different to life on Earth. You're dead right. I've often wondered if that's not a thing that they have visited, they have been here, but because they are so utterly different to what we are used to, we simply didn't realize that they were around because we didn't see anything like we expected, which again is just as possible. Maybe they are nothing more than a form of vapor, which is perfectly reasonable, and we would ignore it because either we can't see it easily or we just think it's nothing more than a dust cloud. Um, so it's eminently possible that is the case, in which case their means of transport, etc., would never be found really by us because it might not be in a form of matter that suits us, it suits them. So you're absolutely correct. Now, we do know, however, in answer of the other thing that you've mentioned, that, for example, often electrical things cut out when aliens turn up, which seems to imply that what they need is energy, that somehow they have drawn um, that energy out of the vehicle or whatever that's cut out and used it to restore or restock their energy. Perhaps what they come to Earth for is something like the magnetic energy of the planet that they can use to repower whatever it is that they use um, as their drive. So perhaps that's the reason. Um, we have no idea what an alien might eat or drink or breathe. Um, I would assume that if they land on Earth without any form of um, spacesuit, that they can breathe this atmosphere, but it's possible that they don't come because they can't. So these are very important questions to which, as such, we do not yet have answers. Now, this CIA document that I'm talking about uh, does report um, some kind of a flying saucer. And the guy says there that he was there with his motorcycle and with a lady by the name of Gabriella. And he says, I left my motorcycle near a tree and walked towards the spot which Gabriella had pointed out. However, I reached the spot about 55 meters from the object, and I realized that my first impression had been wrong. What seemed to be dressed in some kind of shiny metallic clothing um, were two humanoids stooped over and looking at something on the ground. I approached until I was about 10 meters from them and looked over a small fence, and I saw that the large object, whose diameter I estimated to be about 15 meters, was what they were looking at. There were two rows of holes on its periphery, about 30 centimeters in circumference. So it was clearly a ship of some kind with two people in it of some kind. But then, of course, the big question right there is, what people? Were they scientists from a secret development of this flying saucer, or were they aliens? Um, the side of the object on which the holes had been opened began to glitter. The color seemed green but turned later to red. At the same time, it began to make a slight hum. Now, this is all that I'm reading to you from an actual CIA report of an object in Germany. So this thing then flies off, and so on and so forth. And he was terrified. We don't know what it was or who the people in it were. He seemed unable to give an answer in that regard. But you've got to admit, it's one hell of a story. Well, if I say they were humanoids, then they must be human. A fair point, but at the same time, maybe not a fair point. Uh, it's one of those things that what should mobile creatures look like? We know that there are certain specific shapes that, by and large, all living creatures on this planet follow the general form of within their category. And there are additions and retractions from that dependent on. But like all mammals, have four legs, a head, and a torso. It's shaped slightly differently and differently sized in some ways, but that's a standard. Uh, could that be transferred to any kind of mammalian life or something in that regard? Maybe. I don't know. It's a biological question, and one that I think absolutely would be very hard to explain. Um, knowing what such things might be and why is kind of the point, I suppose. Now, when I was checking out the entirety of possible things, Germany's a weird place. So when you're trying to talk about specific alien contact and abductions, there's not a lot. But from what we get reported, there are a number of very interesting points that are made, which may or may not fit to what everyone else says. And some will say that in general, Germany does not have a lot. Some German individuals have reported experience similar to each other in that they include the following: missing time, physical examinations, and actual encounters of extraterrestrial beings. This also connects to stories from other countries. Now, Ender Thought says, I will assume that aliens look nothing like us. Limbs, yes, they would need those, but not a back or neck. We don't know. Um, Maybe the brain sits in the torso. Very possible. You see, again, the bottom line thing is we need to actually make actual contact in order to have some kind of certainty in this regard. And the frustrating thing is we don't get it. I have a theory. My theory is that all of the physical alien stories are probably um, not true, but I think the UFOs is. My theory is that they are so different to us that they do not have um, form such as it is the way we do. I think, in fact, that what we might think are their ships are not. It's them. That the weird lights and things are the aliens. They have a different physical composition to us. And the reason that we haven't encountered directly, for the most part, is because they can't survive in our atmosphere. And perhaps that maybe they've tried and failed because we simply are too different to them. Maybe they don't even fully realize, because they exist in such a different form, that we are the other living intelligence. Um, Perhaps, in fact, just as we haven't figured out that they are the actual alien, they haven't realized we are to them. So I suspect that. Now, I don't know. Wouldn't they do what we do and send a robot instead of a living alien? I suppose that would depend. We're a very physical creature, so we've built robots to do what we don't want to, but it's a physical creature, so to speak. Perhaps they've made their equivalent, but it's not physical as we are, just as they are not. So it's eminently possible that you're actually talking about some kind of a form of intelligent light or a form of intelligent gas that has ignored us by and large, because it doesn't think that we're anything. Just as you wouldn't think to yourself if you felt a puff of wind go past, oh, it's an alien. You wouldn't think that because you expect an alien to be physical. Maybe they don't think we are real because they expect an alien to be a light form, not a physical lump like us. Maybe, possibly. It's a thought, is it not? Um, Chris Jr., we're talking about aliens. We are mainly discussing the aliens of Germany um, at the moment. We go to different countries and cultures around the world when we talk about each different topic that we do. Aliens is the one for the moment, but we are kind of arguing as to what an alien might actually be. And yes, I would love to hear your theory about aliens because very clearly the problem is we don't know what an alien would be like. So yeah, hit us with it. Dead keen. And as he's giving out his theory, typing it up, um, missing time is common in alien abduction stories that you suddenly realize that you've lost a day here or whatever. And the theory is that they took you away for examination and you just don't remember any of it because you were somehow sedated. So you've woken up having been probed or whatever. Though I suspect there again, that's a bit of a dodgy story in some ways. Um, I kind of, I kind of say that it's difficult for me to think about. Um, so Chris Jr. says, my theory is what our aliens are warning about us about is that more aliens are coming. That's a very good point. Um, it's it's reasonable that if you were going to go and check a place out before more came to settle, you would send out your scouts, be they the alien scouts or be they robotic scouts or something in that line, as Endless Thoughts pointed out, um, before you brought everybody else along, an advanced party. Um, so it could be that they came to see if there'd be any resistance before they came and took over the planet, and that they might in future. I suppose it's possible. You say you saw a UFO last night, so describe it to us. Give us a something. But as he's doing his typing thereof, um, my concern really, in a great many ways, is why would some superior intellect travel across 15 million light years in order to go and stick something up your bum? I find that very unlikely. So when it comes to the physical medical examinations, I get very leery about what it may or may not be. I'm far more likely to think it possible that they put some kind of a tracker or recording device into people, um, but not just your straight up probing. So Chris Jr. says, it was flashing green and blue, and I was looking at it, and then it went away as fast as possible and then disappeared. Um, yes. Now, when it comes to UFOs, I will absolutely say that that's a description that is very much more common than you might think. And in different countries with different cultures. So it does appear that that's a something people have seen. Now, science will immediately tell you that it is some kind of sunspot or sundog or something in that regard, and that it's a natural aerial phenomenon. It's definitely not a UFO. Um, but they're obviously skeptics and want to be skeptical. Um, there are those who will say that fits to an idea of what the UFOs at least are capable of, that they do appear as a kind of light of some variety and with different colors, and they can move incredibly fast, often with very erratic movement. So they can, at huge speed, take a right angle turn that we don't have the ability to do with our craft yet. So absolutely that fits to that in that regard. And I would further say, if anything, it adds to my theory that maybe the aliens are not physical as we um, understand. Uh, so maybe yes. Now, there again, and this is something which I have questioned. What if the aliens are going to do examination on something? Endless Thought says, why would the aliens bring the people back after kidnapping for the experiment? Why not keep them? Um, and I'm going to say that I wonder about that. The only reason I can think of at all is that they've actually put some kind of a bug inside you so they can record what you do to get more information about you. That would be the only reason. Otherwise, if they're going to cut you up, they might as well finish the job and just, toss the remains. Um, Chris Jr. says there was a museum, they have an alien, and they got DNA from it, um, and it was tested. Well, okay. When we get to do the Roswell incident, according to the stories around that, they did get an alien, and it was a dead one. And they did get DNA and stuff out of it. That's the theory. Did they really? Well, the problem is it's answered very quickly with there was a cover up. And the issue with that is, first of all, yes, I think if something like that did happen, the FBI, CIA, alphabet soup would cover it up and hide it because, damn it, you want to find out what you're dealing with first. But at the same time, it's an incredibly convenient excuse. Um, Make some for me, endless thoughts. I drank all of mine. I'm down to the last bit of my tea, but we will await you. But yes, you see, that's kind of the problem. It's very easy to say that, oh, there's no evidence why there was a cover-up. So the argument goes both ways, which makes it very hard. Have we had now, as was pointed out in the last live, and what we are working towards as we go through the different countries and cultures on aliens is there a possibility that we as humanity are in fact aliens, or we are part alien, or that we were made by the aliens for some reason? These are all theories, and we don't have any real conclusive ideas or answers on them. So it's a problem to try and answer that, as you can imagine. Um, so maybe if you get DNA off an alien, it'll be the same as ours because really we're related. I don't know, but I want to find out, and we will try. But moving along with this, they do say that descriptions of encounters with uh, extraterrestrials include physical examinations, and some of the individuals in Germany that have claimed to have been abducted reported being subjected to medical examinations or procedures by alien beings. Now, I would like to know more about that. What kind? I mean, where did this sort of thing come from in that regard? It's very, very hard to say. There's a lot not said that I would like to know more about. They also say that they have encountered what we now know as the Greys, the little grey men with the big eyes. That's the archetypal alien encounter type thing. So it seems that the Greys have got around, which might add something to the credence of their being real, in that if lots of different places and people say they've seen the same thing, well, it's more convincing than if it was just one. Now, on the topic of, some individuals have reported the discovery of physical implants after alleged abduction experiences, which they believe are evidence of extraterrestrial intervention. Possible, possible. Now, in Germany, some people say that whether or not these things are real, it's nevertheless facts that the people do experience deep emotional trauma after the alleged event. However, they also note that these experiences may be related to psychological factors like sleep disorders, vivid imagination, or the influence of cultural narrative. Sleep disorders? Sure. Imagination? Just say that they're lying. Because really and truly, to gain deep psychological and emotional trauma from something indicates that something happened. I'm not saying it was an alien or anything like that. I'm just saying if you get the trauma, it came from somewhere. And I know this for truth. Welcome back, my dear. Lovely to have you back. Is the coffee good? You don't get trauma from nothing. I have studied psychology. I have a degree in psychology, amongst other things. So trauma comes from somewhere. You can't fake real emotional trauma. So um, we do know that there was a very interesting study that was done. Wasn't done in Germany or by Germans, but the book that studied it, which might be worth reading if you're interested in it, was called Alien Nightmares: Screen Memories of UFO Alien Abductions, and it explores the connection between dreams, memories, and reported abduction events. So people have studied the phenomenon. What they concluded with, I'm not entirely certain. But with that, there you go. We know that some research suggests that the physical reactions to false memories of alien abduction are similar to those associated with true memories, which makes it difficult to distinguish between the true. But now, again, and this is where, from a psychological perspective at least, I have issue with this. If you have the physical reaction to a memory, something happened. You might not have been abducted by an alien. It might have been something else that is too stressful, and your brain created a story around it, creating a false memory. But something happened to cause it. You don't get false reaction from false memory. I've had very bad nightmares in my time. I've known people who've had them. And the thing about them is that you get over something like that pretty damn fast because it was just a dream. It might be very frightening at the time, but you get over it. To get serious physical reaction, you have to have a reason, not a made up one. Unless you're a little nuts in the head, in which case it's different. So no, I'm going to say that I have an issue with that as an explanation, at least. Lewis Grundling, thank you so much for the likes. I do appreciate very, very greatly. And as I say to everybody repeatedly, like, share, subscribe, join the fan club, because that's what keeps us going. Without your support, we don't have support. And it might not all continue, and we love doing this. I'm sneezing, excuse me. Now, in conclusion, there are reports of alien abductions in Germany. They are not well received. In Germany, most people, it seems, are very skeptical of the supernatural, and most do not believe in any of them as evidence of extraterrestrial encounters. The phenomenon is generally linked to psychological factors, cultural influence, and the subjective nature of reported experience. It seems that Germans in general are just a little bit too practical to be fanciful, which is fair enough. Of course, it doesn't mean that they are right, and it doesn't mean that there are no aliens, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that it does. So, um, with that in line with it, what more can we say? Um, in Germany, in Germany, in Germany, not a lot. We can say that they have seen triangle ships, which we have seen in other places. They have seen the cigar-shaped ships, as we have seen with other places. They have absolutely seen the flying saucers, but most people say that it was the Nazis that built them, which may or may not mean something. Um, so maybe they are not aliens at all. We know during World War II, there were a lot of colored lights which often followed aircraft, which became known as Foo Fighters. And of course, we have that idea that maybe aliens are made of light, which might actually explain a lot of other things as we will get to them in due course. There isn't a lot more even bothered to be reported. And by and large, if you really want proper reports, you need to go to places like America, which keep careful record of these kinds of things more than other places that have a tendency to pretty much say, yeah, it's not serious. Don't worry about it. It's just some kind of atmospheric phenomenon or something. So the number of reports is limited. But now that brings us to question something which I think is quite important in this regard. And what does it mean if there are aliens? So let us assume, for the sake of argument, whatever they might look like, aliens are real. Okay, we're assuming they are at least as intelligent as us. Okay, if that is the case, great. But what does that mean for us? And therein lies the real problem. So, for example, first of all, it's going to have a fairly large impact on our view of religion. We know, and you can apply this to a great many different religions, that we are the chosen of God. Humanity is the chosen ones that will eventually be taken up unto God. Now, let's say for sake of argument, they absolutely do exist and they're aliens and they're completely different to us. Does that mean that they are not chosen by God? Or are they also children of God? What does that mean for religion? Furthermore, what does it mean for our political situation? especially if they turn out to be aggressive. Uh, are we going to band together as a planet to defend ourselves against an alien threat? Or are we going to just argue amongst ourselves? What would they, if they are more advanced than us, why should they help us? If they're not advanced as us, then they probably wouldn't get here. So that would be moot. But even in terms of as an individual, if you suddenly discovered there was an entirely different intelligent race on another planet, what change would it make for you? How would it change your outlook? And as Endless Thoughts has very correctly brought up, if there are people that knows that 100% there are aliens and have evidence, why do they hide it? Well, that's another interesting question. First of all, do they? And the reason I say do they is that there have been people who have said aliens exist and told everybody, and the immediate response was, yeah, you're out of your mind. Come to this nice padded room. So maybe they have, and we didn't believe them. If there is one thing that I can absolutely guarantee to you, one power, not just a skill, power that human beings have is the ability to not believe in something that they don't want to. It's incredible. Denial is one of our great superpowers. But at the same time, um, perhaps all the conspiracy theories are true. At the end of the day, if we have learned one thing about governments out of history, and I'm not talking about any specific one at all, but all of them, we know that they hide stuff from people in order to manage people, whether for good reasons or bad reasons. We know for an absolute fact that huge amounts of money plays a big role in this. We know for fact that media and news is manipulated, and it's been proved on multiple occasions for good or bad reasons, whatever. So, would the governments of the world tell us if they found proof of aliens, or would they cover it up and hide it away? I suspect they would cover it up at least until they knew how to deal with it, and whether or not it was a threat. We know that if, and this is fact, I think you can all agree, that if suddenly it was proved aliens exist and they landed in the middle of your country, whichever one it was, there would be absolute mass panic, which implies that maybe it's known and they don't tell people because there would be mass panic and craziness and everything would go to complete shite. So, yeah, I think that there is reason that they would cover things up, whether or not there is good reason. There is reason, if not good reason, if that makes sense. Um, so, in that regard, I'm going to have to say yes. I think that it would be definitely covered up. Um, I think that by and large, that kind of information would be also covered up partly because if I've made contact with a superior race before you have, and I don't like you all that much, just so you know, um, I quite possibly might want to make sure I've got the edge and they're friends with me first, so that if we ever have to have a throwdown, it's going to be me and you, and I've got the aliens, not you. So there is that. Huge thanks to Endless thoughts for her massive kindness on those roses. You are such a darling, you. And I am very, very grateful indeed. So thank you very much. Um, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think governments routinely cover up things like this? And do you think that if aliens really did exist and we found proof, would the governments hide it from us, and at least for a time? I think it's fair to say that they might. Nevertheless, nevertheless, we do know that there have been occasions of alleged alien abduction um, that seems to be connected with sleep paralysis that might not be real at all. As one person said, I occasionally suffer from sleep paralysis. It developed in my early 20s, and I've had the alien abduction dream. My father and I love to watch shows about aliens, so I assume people who claim that they were abducted had some kind of sleep paralysis. In my case, it started with flashes of blue light. Chris Jr. mentioned blue light, just saying. Um, and I felt myself being lifted out of bed by the chest. I was blinded by a white light. I could hear a loud mechanical whirring. When I woke up, I was sitting up in the bed with my chest stuck out. My arms were holding me up. The experience was the most intense sleep paralysis dream I've ever had. I can see how somebody could have that dream, panic, and tell everybody that it was aliens. Or was it aliens? Um, Other people have reported similar type stories. I've had deep sleep paralysis a few times. The most scary one, I dreamed I was driving. I parked. I was in a sickly yellow fluorescent lit carport. I tried to get out the car, but I couldn't support myself. My legs were weak. Then a voice started whispering creepy and suggestive things in my ear. Um, I could totally understand how people from another era would believe in things like succubus or incubus, and that um, I might have almost been assaulted by a nether being, and you were actually abducted by the aliens. I'm not sure which is worse, that these things might happen, or that your brain has the ability to create image that cause you to think that they are. Well, there's a fair one. Um, yes, I'm certain that most people would not be sensible if it was discovered aliens were true. Now, there are two versions of sleep paralysis stories. But then again, is sleep paralysis, or is it the result of aliens or demons? It's a very difficult one to say. Um, One person's comment was, um, any paranormal or alien experience that begins with a person being in bed is pretty much discountable. Sleep paralysis is terrifying, even without any dreams, but it doesn't mean that um, this is aliens. From their point of view, religion would change, their culture and behavior will change, society could end. Well, that's the big fear, and it's a very reasonable one, because when we've had mass panic for whatever reason, we do absolutely know that people do not respond well, and society does indeed go crazy. Um, and the problem with things like religion is that they are very dear to people's hearts and deeply held views. And if people believe that this is some kind of a mission or a punishment from God, they can absolutely go quite ballistic about things where normally they would be very reasonable people. So, absolutely, that would be a very serious factor to consider. Um, Behavioral change and more, surely. And of course, given how society ultimately is made up of people, I mean, that's what it is. So if the people go mad, yeah, society could break down, society could end, things could absolutely happen, um, which is very, very important in that regard. So, yes, you're quite right. Um, why not see the aliens as Jesus? Well, to be fair, throughout history, stories which have been told could very, very easily be, by changing just a couple of names, be about the gods or the aliens or the fairy. So it's very possible that people could or would, um, and have in the past, to be fair, that they really do that kind of thing, which could be a good reason, in a sense, um, to absolutely um, say that, yeah, don't tell people, because people will go a little bit ballistic. Um, because we've had from history that proof that people absolutely have gone completely ballistic, which is fair enough. But um, a comment that was made in a scientific publication that I discovered during my research, it says that the response to trauma is driven by emotional beliefs, whether accurate or not. If you seriously think you were being abducted by aliens, in a sense you were. And the study suggests that physical reactions to false memories can be the same as true memories, as psychologist Michelle Leichman of the University of New Hampshire, Durham, uh, points out. The result is troubling. It underscores the similarities between true and false memories at an even more profound level than researchers generally think. Well, speaking as someone who studied psychology, and I suppose in some senses, while I'm not a licensed practitioner to the public, I am a psychologist, I am going to say that I disagree and I would like to see these studies before I accept them, because by and large, unless you actually have some kind of mental problem, enough people do, I suppose, um, no, false memories do not cause those kind of physical reactions. False memories that overlay a different reality cause physical reactions. Um, Hallucinations may indeed seem real, but my point is that no matter what the false memory is, it would need to be backed up with some kind of reality as well, because um, while our brain interprets things in different ways, there has to be a certain amount of trigger. And that's the point that I say. So let us assume um, you were abducted and maltreated and then released, and you couldn't mentally handle the fact that a person did that to you, you might then create within your mind the false memory of it being an alien abduction. And yes, that memory is false, but it nevertheless was triggered by something real. Um, I think you have to be quite out of your nut uh, to be able to create such a powerful false memory that there is no trigger in reality to the false memory. So I would want to absolutely see the study because I find that hard to believe from a psychological perspective. But then again, um, it's a study out of America anyway, where they did the study in all in terms of what they call uh, reactions to things like commercials and so on and so forth, which again I would want to see the actual study before I would make an opinion thereon. I think that there's issues. Um, they certainly were asking the right questions in that regard. Um, People who have endured horrible ordeals will shudder and shake when they recall the events. Um, but then they say people who create memories of trauma that didn't happen are often as steadfast in their belief in the reality of the incident as from real life trauma survivors. Psychologist Richard McNally of Harvard University wanted to know how deep the conviction goes. Do people who remember false traumatic events show the same physiological reactions to the memories as others do who experience real trauma? McNally investigated people who had memories that were clearly fake, namely memories of alien abduction. How do you know they were clearly fake? You've instantly decided that they were with no proof. Uh, Now, yeah, okay, you have memories of your hallucinations, not what actually happened. Yes, the memories are false, but there had to be a trigger event. But when you sit here going, oh, we chose people who had clearly false memories, like alien abductions, well, right off bat, that's bullshit for research and science terms because how did you know they were false memories and not actually memories of a real alien? You don't know. So, right off bat, I'm going to call that a very bad set of science. You need to find something whereby it's absolutely certain that nothing could have happened and take the false memories from there. And I wouldn't be too clear on how you could do that. Um, but just because volunteers who claim to have been abducted physiologically responded with trauma response to listening to their story told back to them uh, doesn't mean it didn't happen. Um, Stress response had mirrored those people remembering Vietnam combat events and childhood sexual abuse when they were involved and had post traumatic stress disorder. Yeah, you have no proof that the alien abductions didn't happen, and therefore I'm going to throw it out there that this study was absolute shite. Sorry, McNally, you need to prove that the false memories were indeed false before you just automatically accept that. Maybe they were abducted um, by aliens. So I'm not saying that aliens do exist, but I am absolutely saying that that was a crap study. Uh, you can't just assume in that regard. Um, so, yep, sorry, thrown out the window from a psychological perspective of clear science. Um, so take it as you will. Um, Nevertheless, we will definitely say that um, people will react badly if aliens are proved to exist. I think people have been shown to react very badly when they think something supernatural exists. Um, you will assume it's false because of lack of evidence. No, in the longer study, which you can go and read if you like, it's McNally on PTSD and false memory research. They assumed that because it was an alien abduction story, therefore it was false. They didn't have uh, evidence one way or the other. And to me, that's very bad science. You must be certain of your base rules before you can start making progress. Maybe those people were abducted by aliens, and that's why they showed the physiological trauma response. I'm not saying that false memories don't cause trauma response. What I am saying is there has to be an underlying real trigger, whether it's what they think happened or whether they made a false memory to cover over what happened. Nevertheless, there has to be an actual trigger for there to be real body trauma in that way. And that's, um, I did work with a number of um, teen abuse victims for some time, and I can tell you that while the stories could sometimes get a bit unhinged, I will absolutely tell you that something did happen. Maybe not the way they said, but it did. And that's my problem with his study. That said, um, I would say I'm in two minds as to whether or not you should um, cover up evidence of aliens. Um, we know for a fact, a couple of years back, there was a really, really, really good stage magician that started doing shows and things where um, his magic was, it was illusion. It wasn't real magic, it was stage magic. But he was so good, and a number of people suddenly decided and really panicked and were terrified that he was in some way this satanic being and was using unearthly powers. And they really did go quite ballistic about it. Um, And I mean, he was just a stage magician. Of course, he didn't tell you how he did it. He was makes his money off it. It's his job. He was an entertainer. But people really got quite unhinged about him. So I think if you could actually prove that there was alien abduction at all, I think it would be fair to say people would go quite unhinged. Any physical evidence on the abducted people? Well, again, um, not in Germany. There have been people who have said they have found somethings which are unidentified, which may or may not mean anything. Um, I'm going to see if I can actually find a couple of cases that something was found to prove in some regard, and if there is any physical evidence thereon, because that is a very good question. I would like to see physical evidence of something that isn't human in origin. However, and to smack back at you crudely with, um, you gave me the answer. Sorry, I'm being mean. Um, Gobliotheca. Was that developed by humans, or was that made by aliens? The Voynich manuscript, was it made by aliens? Is that actually proof? I don't know. It's a very good question. But we will take this further, I think, and we absolutely do need to dig up more in order to give an answer because of the severe amount of effect that I'm convinced would be had if these things can be proved. I think that it would make people go a little bit nuts in the head. I think that's fair. So maybe we shouldn't show that somehow. I don't know. Um, it's a hard question. People are a bit crazy, quite a lot. That is true. Um, I don't think it would change my life or worldview much if I found out aliens really did exist. But that said, I've always kind of assumed that they do. Um, would I be a little bit shocked and surprised? Oh, hell yeah. Um, to get hard evidence, I think anybody would be. Um, I I'm going to say that I don't think it would change my life philosophy all that much at all. Um, I would like to know for sure. I would like proof of such things. Um, it would certainly be cool. Well, yes, I think a certain amount of fear would be a reasonable response, actually. I think that I would go as far as to say you should be scared because if they got here, clearly their intellect is sufficient to travel across space in amazing ways. And then the immediate question would be, what the hell do you want here and why? Because we might be considered to be nothing more than uh, irritating local livestock to be moved out of the way and destroyed so they can take over the planet, which wouldn't be good for us at all. Um, so, yes, I think a certain amount of fear would be reasonable and indeed sensible. Um, I'm most skeptical of the stories that happen where people claim that the aliens arrived and gave a message of uh, ecological responsibility and peace and love. Um, if I've just traveled 15,000 billion light years across the galaxy and found an intelligent species uh, on another planet, my first response is not going to be go and water the plants. Sorry. I think that would be both foolish and fantastical. I might expect a certain amount of aggression or fear on their part. Hey, we found this other race and they're actually somewhat intelligent. Wow. So there's that side. But I don't think it would start with messages of universal peace. Um, that would be the big question. Uh, in the thoughts as asked, are they friendly and have compassion? Are they conscious with morality? Well, that would be a damn good question. I'd like to think so. Um, but again, you see, we go back to the age-old problem. By and large, our compassion and morality is directed at other humans. It doesn't stop us having steak on a bun. So, from the cow's perspective, we're not bloody moral at all. Um, so, what if the aliens are so much more advanced? Do we count as fellow intelligent beings, or are we the cow equivalent? And well, track track uh, track history on humanity is, oh look, we found you. We are first going to kill you, uh, subjugate you, or make you slaves. I mean, throughout history, that's been the response of every single culture, barring two. And the two that didn't do it um, lived in an environment that was quite so tough that they had more than enough of an issue um, dealing with the environment and surviving, that they didn't bother any other peoples because they simply didn't have the time. So, yeah, humanity's track record not good, I think. Um, I have a suspicion that there might be issue there. Um, there was a very amusing skit that was put up on YouTube, I think, whereby there was an alien spacecraft that landed, and the aliens, as they were coming out, were saying to each other, like, we will tell them of peace and love, and we will speak to them of saving their planet. And they get out, and all these police cars suddenly pull up and stop, and the cops jump out with shotguns and everything. And the aliens step forward and go, we bring you a message. And then it's just gunfire, and all the aliens are slaughtered, and then the humans blow up the spaceship. And I thought, not unreasonable. That's very human a reaction. So, if they were less evolved and they came here, probably see if we could keep one as a pet. I think that's literally the human response. Get one, keep it in captivity, see what we can do with it, and then cut it open to figure out how it works on the inside. Um, Again, humanity. I think one of the funniest jokes I've encountered in terms of aliens, and you've probably seen it. You see the spaceship flying through space, and there's Earth, and the little kid alien um, looks out. Is Ma, can we stop there? And the mother presses a button on the dashboard, and the doors all lock. And she says to her kid, we don't talk about that place. That's where the bad ones are. To be fair, we are known for our violence and war. Um, Maybe we don't get alien visitation because they're like, yeah, those guys are too ghetto for us. What would we do if we visited them? Probably try and steal some and bring them back as pets. Or worse, make war, steal everything, take over the planet. That's humanity for you. So, yeah, I don't have a massively great view of most of humanity. So maybe I'm a cynic. But I strongly suspect that our first alien encounter, when it ever happens, if it ever happens, probably won't go well. I'm just saying. But there you have it. Um, I have to be honest that in terms of Germany was a little quiet. And I'm thinking we need to find a place with a bit more action in terms of UFOs and alien abductions if we are to do better um, in that regard. So, something a little bit to add to what we would know. And yes, to maybe try and give a little bit of an answer to if people did encounter aliens, what did they do? What message did we give back to them? That's a damned good question, and one that I do not have an answer for yet. But we shall do that. And as we progress, um, JT, Sharon McKay, and Endless Thoughts, what would you like to talk about in the next live, seeing as you have been here throughout and stuck with it? Alien related, of course. Um, let's have something to start us off with a bang. What would you like to hear about? Uh, and let's take it from there. But for tonight, at least, I think we shall stop there. It's been 2 hours of quite a lot of fun and very, very interesting, and we shall absolutely take it further. So, um, yeah, but I shall bid you good evening, and may you sleep deep and sweet. But as I always tell you, remember, sleep with one eye open, because you never know. Sometimes those things that are out there that go bump in the night might very well possibly go bump for you.